Hi, this is Cliff Holmes, founder of the Gospel Blog, and with me today is Yvon Prehn. Yvon runs a website called Church Communications, Effective Church Communications, excuse me. And
That's
so,
okay.
no problem. So, Yvon, please, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful.
That's great. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Alrighty. My ministry, as I was thinking about it and thinking about this interview, I really, you might say, the Lord's kind of prepared me for it all my life. There were only two things that I ever wanted to do growing up. All I wanted to do is I just wanted to be a writer and a teacher for Jesus. That is all I ever wanted to do. Now, on the teaching side, when I was in third grade, I started teaching the kindergartners in Sunday school. When I was in sixth grade, I started teaching the fourth graders. When I got into high school, when I was a sophomore, my high school sponsors had to leave, and I raised my hand and I said, well, I think I could do that. And I did youth work for 20-some years until I got a little too old for lock-ins and, couldn't quite handle that anymore. But I've taught adult Sunday school classes and children, ever since then. So teaching something I really love. I ended up getting a degree in education and then got a master's degree in church history, and I've taught high school and college and all that kind of stuff. But then the really important thing was on the writing side. I always wanted to communicate for Jesus. And, doing ministry stuff, even in high school, I'd paste together little newsletters and all those sorts of things. And my daddy was in the military, and he retired in Colorado Springs. And that was just the most perfect place for a Christian writer to grow up. There were all these Christian organizations there. And I had my first article nationally published when I was 16. Went on to work with a lot of the organizations there. I was senior editor for Compassion International and then for Young Life International. And when I started out, we did everything kind of the traditional way. We did the typesetting and the layout and, all that kind of stuff. And it was when I was at Young Life that desktop publishing was invented. And the very first demonstration that I saw, I said, this is going to change everything. And I realized, it did. You didn't have to spend all these hours doing all this stuff and spend all this money. And not long after that, Young Life, and, I look at it now, the great sovereignty of God, they had to shut down their in-house communications department, shut down the print shop, the whole thing. And I went out on my own and started teaching churches and Christian ministries just how to do communications work and using the computer and writing, and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
So at what point, what caused you to start Effective Church Communications?
Well, I realized, literally, this has been could be close to 30 years ago now. Don't tell anybody. I'm actually, I started when I was like 3 years old. But,
oh, okay.
No kidding. Yeah, but no, seriously, I realized that most people in the church we're in ministry, doing the bulletin, doing the newsletter and all that because they love Jesus. Bless their hearts, didn't have any training in it. And all of a sudden, and I saw this happen again and again and again, somebody in the church would get this great idea, oh, we're going to start doing it all on the computer now. And so the church secretary would show up on Monday morning. Her typewriter was gone. She had this computer, and they informed her that, oh, aren't you lucky? You get to do all your work on this now. This really happened, and it happened a lot. And the Lord had just given me, the training and the skills. And, I've been able to learn how to do all kinds of stuff. And being a teacher, I just thought, well, I can teach people how to do that. And so I literally just started having groups of church secretaries there in Colorado Springs, coming to little seminars that I did. And, one thing that was really interesting that happened, too, again, extraordinary sovereignty of God, and I won't go into all the details on it, but I ended up working for a period of time for Paget Thompson, which, as they used to teach us to say, is the nation's largest one-day seminar company. And what I did is I traveled around the country and taught seminars. And what was interesting about that is it trained me on how to travel and do seminars, because a number of years later, then that ended up being my full-time ministry. For about 15 years, I traveled all over North America teaching seminars on church communications. But I also realized after doing that for a short period of time, and I was making more money than I'd ever made. I just worked for Christian organizations, so like a real paycheck was wow, But at the same time, I really didn't care if Allstate Insurance had a good newsletter. That didn't matter to me. And so I quit doing that, and people thought I was just insane. But I quit that, and I said, no, I want to do this as a ministry. And so that's what got me started doing it. And it's just I just kept doing what I started doing. So
now I'm sure somebody is watching this thinking, most church bulletins have the order of services, a couple announcements, the pastor's name, some church information. Mm-hmm. So how hard could that actually be? How can somebody, I guess, in essence, mess that up?
Well, there's a whole lot of answers and a whole lot of levels on that. First of all, you said a very interesting thing, and that is, you said most church bulletins have an order of service. Do you know that there's a strong trend today against putting that in the church bulletin?
Really?
Yeah, churches are going and putting that on the website. Now, I would say to a church that does that, huge mistake. The reason is, if you are wanting visitors to connect with your church, they don't know what your website is. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not against websites. In fact, if you go to my website, I created the whole thing. And that's one of the reasons why I say, I don't care how old you are, you can do it. If I learned it, you can learn it. But seriously, church communications today, the bulletin is only one part of it. And I think one of the very most effective parts, one of the most important things, because for many people today, because everybody knows that our world is basically post-Christian, whatever you want to call it, mm-hmm. The Holy Spirit's still out there. Convicting people of sin, righteousness, and judgment. They're going to come to your church. They come to your church. That church bulletin might be the very first piece of Christian literature somebody sees. And so part of my ministry is to really give people a vision. I can teach you how to do the typesetting and the writing and the layout, blah, blah, blah. That's not what's critical. What's critical is your heart in it. Are you really working to make people feel comfortable in the church service? Do you explain it carefully? Do you have a gospel presentation in there? Just astounds me how many church bulletins I look at, and I look at thousands of them. Mm-hmm. How many don't tell people how to become a Christian? Well, what's your church about? Wow. So, and two, the announcements in it, that's what links people up to the other ministries during the week. And there are ways that you can write, lay out, do all these things that will just make the response so much better.
So, and I've been in church all my life, and I had I don't ever remember seeing a gospel presentation in the church bulletin. Yeah. So I'm assuming this is a common practice among some churches?
Well, I think way too few. Okay. Just in all honesty, because again, what are we about? What is the most important thing about us? It isn't putting on the potluck next week. Mm-hmm. It isn't that, oh, by the way, people, if you don't, kind of keep giving some more, we're going to be in a world of hurt. Mm-hmm. That's not what we're about. And the thing that I really recommend today is that, you not only have something in your church bulletin, but what's really wonderful today, one of the things that I teach in my ministry is the importance of multi-channel communications. Today, we don't just do the bulletin, but we have our website, we have our church Facebook page, we have our church Twitter, we have, all kinds of different things like that, and you want all of them to work together. And so, for example, on the in the bulletin, you can say, this is just briefly what it means to be a Christian, but, if you would like to check this out more, here are these websites. And you can link them then to more in-depth explanations. If you have questions, go to this website. Everything should all work together to, share the same message.
So I'm trying to understand, why should a church be concerned about all this?
Well, that's such a good question. And there's so many reasons. Let me just give you a few of them. Okay. First of all, Jesus said we're supposed to go into all the world and preach the gospel. Mm-hmm. So how do we preach it? We preach it verbally, but we also preach it through all of our communications. And today, with the internet, like what you're doing, what you're doing, I consider very much a part of church communications. And tons of churches, they don't, they have no idea in many ways how easy what we're doing is. Yeah. and churches could be doing that. You know, pastors could be having video conversations like we are with people who have questions. They don't even have to have the additional picture up there. You know, just, you know, call Pastor so-and-so Thursday afternoon, I'll answer your questions. Now, it might be kind of scary, but, you know, there's all these things that we can do. And see, the thing is, the reason that we need to be concerned about it is, let's face it, our church today is not communicating the truth of what it's about and what Jesus is about very well. You know, you look at the national news, and all the time we see people who are saying things, and we're going, we're not about that. You know, that isn't us, you know? And so, and whose fault is that? It's our fault. You know, if people aren't hearing the message, we're not communicating it. We have the words of eternal life. And so you know, I really want to get that passion across to people, and how you do it. You know, you don't do it by being cool and edgy, and, you know, there's a lot of trends in church communication today. Now, I'm not saying that's, you know, you want to have an appropriate style and all that, but sometimes churches move so far into the direction of just how stuff looks, or being super or whatever, that they forget that the gospel is an offense. You know, and like one pastor said, and I don't know who it was, forgive me for not citing him a long time ago, he says, I want to communicate it so clearly that people know why they're being offended. You know, and, you know, I don't mean that in a flippant way, but, you know, it's important. Communication is important, what we do.
So what are some of the pitfalls that you've seen churches fall into regarding their communications?
Well, oh my goodness, there's a lot of them. Oh my, you know, that's why I've got my website, my ministry, and you know, I keep working on stuff. I'll give you just some of the top ones. And let me say, though, to start out with, please, those of you that are working in communications in the church, this is not a personal criticism at all. And I just want to commend you all so much. The thing is, pretty much every person that I know that works in church communication has had no training whatsoever in what is today an extraordinarily complex task. Very few church secretaries are taught, you know, even how to use their particular computer and operating system software. Not only that, how to run what's basically an advertising campaign today, how to do outreach marketing. You know, they don't have any training in that. Pastors are not taught that at seminary. They're taught how to preach and lead and do all kinds of wonderful things, but how to oversee a communications program, no training. So, you know, that's, so I don't want anybody listening to this to think that, you know, I'm criticizing you personally in any way. So that's super important. But I mean, you know, really is. I don't want people to feel bad.
You want to get that out there.
You know, just never want to do that. Yeah. But some of the biggest problems, okay, number one is what I call the church office bubble. You know, those of us that have been in church all our life, we live in this little bubble, and we forget that not everybody lives in a little bubble. And so, you know, that is the number one thing. Not everybody knows what communion is. For example, you go into a church, and let me paint this picture for you. Well, even starting out before communion, you're, you know, totally unchurched person. You know, in our society, you could go to school your whole life and never once hear anything about Jesus, the gospel, whatever. But again, we all have that empty place inside. You walk into a church, and people may or may not be friendly going in. And especially if a church doesn't give you an order of service, you don't know what's going to happen. You're sitting down, and then all of a sudden, everybody jumps up, starts singing songs you don't know. And then they sing them again. And then they sing them again. And some people kind of start dancing around, and you're thinking, what is this? Is this a rock? What is it? You know, and then maybe your knee starts hurting, and you think, can I sit down? Nobody else sitting down. What do I do? And then finally, after about 40 minutes, if you've lasted that long and haven't walked out, people sit down, the lights dim, and then everybody gets real quiet. And then they pass around these little plates with little tiny cookies and little bits of juice, and you're thinking, is it snack time? You know, how come there's so little? Yeah. You know, I'm serious.
No, you're right.
You're
right.
You know, and we, those of us in the church bubble, were just thinking, you know, and what are these pagans doing? You know, and so, you know, we got to put ourselves in the place of somebody who's never been to church before. And in one of my books, and I have it on the website too, I talk about this one church that, you know, the most fantastic thing on the front of their bulletin. And by the way, too, I tell people, for an unchurched person, the bulletin is like your program. that's the program for what's going to happen. You know, like you go to a play, you go to a ball game, you know, everybody gets programmed, you know. How come the church doesn't do a good one? But anyway, this one had one, and I can still remember it today. On the front of it says, "Welcome. We're so glad you're here." And then it just explains stuff. It just said, "We start our service with about 30, 40 minutes of singing. If you don't know the songs," it says, "we'll sing them a few times. Just follow along." And it says, "Feel free to sit, stand, sing, dance, or do whatever you want to do to praise Jesus." Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know, just that little phrase, "feel free to sit, stand, sing, dance." You know, it gives people the permission to do whatever they need to do. Mm-hmm. And then it says, you know, that'll be followed by a short talk by our pastor. And then we do an offering. Now, this isn't for you. The only thing we want from visitors is your connection card. After that, we've got coffee and punch in the lobby. And just take time to get to know us. Now, is that cool or is that cool? But you see how that, you know, they got out of the church bubble. Mm-hmm. And communicated. You know, that's the kind of thing I'm trying to help people learn to do. So that's number one. The other thing is not communicating in all the channels that are available today. One thing I stress again and again and again, it's not a time of either or. It's both and. You know, you do a good printed bulletin, you do a good website, you do a good Facebook page. You know, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of work. That's why you need a team. Talk a lot about, you know, how you got to have a team of people. So, you know, those are some of the things. The other one of my top whatevers is we're not complete in what we say. Both in the little things and the big things. First of all, you know, like I said, you know, we don't tell people, you know, why is the church important? Well, you know, kind of going to heaven and having your sins forgiven, and, you know, these things are pretty important. But you'd be hard-pressed to find out some of the big issues in a church bulletin, for example, or even on church websites. I recently did a search on a whole lot of church websites, and you'd be amazed at how few of them actually tell you how to become a Christian. I'm sad, you know, but, you know, check all of you are listening, check out your church website. You might be embarrassed, but not only the big things, but in little things. I can't tell you how many bulletin announcements say things like Bible study at the Johnsons this week, same time, same place. yeah, see, we do that, don't we?
Where's the Johnsons?
Yeah. You know, call Mary Jane about the potluck. She'll tell you what to do. No phone number for Mary Jane. You know, and so what, again, all these things, what they say to a visitor is, this is an insider club. You know, and I don't belong. So, and we wonder why the church is dying. You know, and I think, you know, it's not big deal things. You know, the Word of God's the Word of God. The Gospel is the Gospel. The church is the church. We just need to, I don't think it's big things we need to do. We just more need to be clear on how we communicate little things.
So do you think, from the church perspective of a church bulletin, do you think that they should be done with the assumption that a person has never been to church before?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. If your church wants to reach unchurched people.
So
now, go ahead.
Well, so there are a lot of people watching this probably thinking, so I'm basically making a bulletin for maybe 3 or 4 people when our church has 300, and I'm making this bulletin to appease 3 or 4 people who may have come and never been to church before.
Okay, there's a couple things on that. Now, this is really good point. First of all, I'm gonna kind of nail you on a theological thing, and then I'll get practical.
Okay.
Now, what did our Lord do with the one little sheepy that went astray?
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
No, he focused all his energy on one little sheep. Yeah. So, you know, I'm telling people, you know, you got to keep that one little sheepy in mind. But see, the thing is, what I have found, and this doesn't mean the whole thing's geared towards that. You can do, you know, again, you can do both. And I have, you know, lots of examples, you know, on my website for, you know, and I don't want to just, well, I do want you to go there because it'll help you out a lot. But for example, one of the things that I say on your announcements, you want to make them really complete, not only for visitors, but I don't know a single church out there that has the number of people from their congregation participating that should be. So often in the church office, we assume that our people know more than they know. And, you know, for example, a lot of current studies show that out of your entire congregation, perhaps only 20% or less can be there every Sunday out of the month. And that's because, changing church patterns, a lot of people have to work on Sunday, or single parent families, or, custody issues, or, they never used to do sports events on Sunday. And now, if your child's in, say, a youth soccer league, forget it. They do that on Sunday morning. So, just a lot of things like that. But then in the church office, there's oftentimes this rule: we're only going to put it in the bulletin twice, just twice. That's it, no more. And then nobody shows up for something, and they go, well, they just don't care. The congregation doesn't care. And it's just so wrong. They care, but they weren't there when you announced it. And so a lot of the stuff that we think we might be doing it for unchurched people, it really benefits our own people. And let me just give you one really practical example. In the section on announcements, you can say something like, here's all the wonderful things that are going on in the church this week. Now, these are open to everybody. We want all of you to come. Hopefully there's information on each one here, but if not, call the church office. But, just check us out doing something other than Sunday morning. Now, that says a lot of good things to a visitor, but also, once again, they're in a church around that has the attendance during the week on Bible studies and service things that they'd like. And so making it clear to everybody will increase all of your participation.
So what you said is really interesting, because it kind of just changes the whole thought pattern about how people approach church in general. I mean, a lot of times church is kind of like a country club that, we have our some 50, some 500, some 1,000, 1,000 people country club, and everybody else, you're just a visitor to our exclusive club.
Right.
But what you're saying is now that the whole operation of the church should be focused on the 2, 3, 4 people who are not members of this exclusive club, who've never even been in the club before. That's a total different mind shift than I would say 90% of churches in the country probably have.
Well, and there's a reason why the church is dying. We have been reaching out to those 2 or 3 or 4, and that's just so important. Again, you want to do as much as you can for your members. I've kind of come up with a little thing that I call the 5 steps of effective church communication. And the first one is where you invite people, and then you inform them in the church. But then you want to involve them, you want to instruct them, and you want to inspire them. We've talked pretty much just about the church bulletin, but there's tons of other things that you want to do in the church then to, once people come and they're there, and for all of the people that are there, most of them, Jesus said that we are to make disciples. And sort of the little, my little slogan for my ministry is that I help churches create communications that will fully fulfill the Great Commission. That's my whole thing. So a lot of communication that you do for the rest of your church is to build them up to become disciples, not just sitting there feeling comfortable in the country club.
So we talked about the bulletin. That's when they first come in. What are some things that churches can do after to continue the communication? So you've come, you've seen our bulletin, you've hooked to the message of Christ. What can a church do to continue that communication with its members?
Okay, there's a number of things that you can do then. One of the most important things at that point today is your website. If at all possible, well, let me backtrack. You need a way to connect with those visitors. And I have tons of stuff I've written. I wrote a whole book on it, where your connection card is so important. You've got to get people's information, and there are ways to do that that are more effective. One of the things that I always have to chuckle at is how many churches are, singing songs and all this kind of stuff, and while everybody's standing up, they'll say, and oh, by the way, fellow, the communication, and then they just, people don't even hear what they said, and they kind of go zooming on, and they wonder why no visitors ever fill out the cards. Where I tell people this is sort of the bridge piece of communications, where when everybody's sitting down, pastor or worship leader can stand up and say, I'd like all of you to now take out your connection card. You know, connection card's kind of nice. Visitor card makes them feel on the spot. You know, I say, we really want to know that you're here. Now, we just love it if you put in your name, your email, whatever. And most important of all, if you have a prayer request, if you have a question, if there's something that you didn't like that I said, I want you to write that down. Now, you hold on to that throughout the service, and then at the end, we'll collect it. I know some churches, they go, oh, but we do our offering sooner. Well, I'm going, well, change it. Do it at the end. I mean, we're talking eternal souls here. So, and then at the end of the service, Pastor can then say something like, I hope that the service, had something for you today. Once again, please take out that connection card. Now, if you had a question, if you have a prayer request, if there's any way we can help you on your spiritual journey, we want to know. Now, in a few minutes, our ushers are going to be taking up the offering. Please don't feel free that, give us any money. All we want from you is that connection card. Now, I tell people, if you do that, be prepared, because you will be absolutely flooded with responses. And I know this from personal experience. My husband's a bivocational pastor, and we did single adult ministry for many years. We were in a church that actually did this process and was a wonderful, huge, growing church. And every single week, and I'm not exaggerating here, I always double check with my husband to make sure I wasn't overstating it, but literally every week, because they would go through the cards, he'd get the ones from singles, we would get a card that said something like, I've been married 10, 20 years, my spouse just walked out on me, I am desperate and I don't know what to do. And, needless to say, my husband would follow up right away, and we had a singles group, and we live in a fairly small town. We had a singles group of over 300 singles, which is bigger than a lot of churches. But we, see, there was that connecting communication piece. And I seriously do tell churches, don't even think about doing this until you have your follow-up in place, because you will be flooded. You will be absolutely flooded with responses. And churches that have done it just go, man, we didn't know there's so many hurting people coming to our church. But if you don't give them a way to respond, they come in, they walk out the door, you never know they were there. So, really important. Then you can connect with them, tell them about your website, put them on your newsletter list, your emails, all that kind of thing. And then you can get the communication going. And then, once you get them to come to different things, there's tons more communications. For example, I teach an adult Sunday school class. Well, my Sunday school class, every week, they get notes. A lot of Sunday school teachers don't give people Bible notes. I also have a website for it. I have a Twitter thing. And that's just for my Sunday school class. But, people, again, are so busy today, they don't, they're not always able to come. But they really appreciate it. I use WordPress to do my little, it's completely free website. I put my notes up there, and people can get them right away. So
you mentioned social media before. What do you say to those people, those, in many cases, pastors, who believe that Facebook, Twitter is a complete waste of time?
Well, they can be. They can be. And I acknowledge that up front. In fact, I just did on my blog, I just did an article that I know a lot of people aren't going to like, that is about why you don't need to share your personal life on on Facebook. Because I don't think you need to. I'm all about talking about Jesus. Now, if you want to and you're called to do that, that's perfectly fine. But I give all these reasons that you don't need to do it. But having said that, I still think that churches need this. And what I say to pastors and stuff like that, and two, you kind of have to, you have to find out, kind of what's their fear. Because I'm married to a baby boomer age pastor, and I searched on the web recently, and most of the leadership in churches today is still either, baby boomer age group. Most of these guys, and most of them are guys, they did not grow up with a computer. They did not have the computer in college. They've always had ladies working for them who did the computer stuff. And now you tell that person that he's got to get online, and chances are he doesn't even know how to type, touch type. Mm-hmm. And also, like my husband, bless his heart. I mean, my husband can lead a group of people to the gates of hell and back, and they'd all be there cheering. He's a natural born leader. He's great and all that. Yeah. That man cannot spell a word correctly. His life depended on it. That's why he's me. So a lot of times that kind of stuff is there. And to tell my husband that he has to, do social media, he just go, not this side of glory.
Oh, wow.
But, so sometimes you need to do that. And what some churches have done, what I recommend, is that you give the pastor what I call a web buddy, where he has with me, I answer all my husband's emails. I do the Sunday school website for the both of us. I do all that kind of stuff, and he does what only he can do. So we do that, and then I tell people in the church, think in terms of a team. And so sometimes if you let a pastor know that, and again too, you don't have to share all about your personal life. Again, some youth pastors or some people might want to share a whole lot more, but you don't have to do that. So the whole thing is, it's not about you, it's about who are the people that we're trying to reach. And that's why, again, Apostle Paul said, all things to all people that we might win some. So that's why social media.
What can people expect realistically as far as results? Because someone watching this may implement many of your tips, may purchase one of your books or any of your books, and I would recommend that they do that. But what is a realistic expectation? I mean, I don't think someone will buy the book and then read the book and then turn around and 20 members join the church the next Sunday. So what are some? Because I want to make sure people have realistic expectations when they take your advice.
Okay, first of all, it's not really so much my stuff, and it isn't one or two things. This is one of the things that I really want to emphasize to churches is, if you are going to get serious about your communications, I recommend most of all, and first of all, is that you go on to my website. It's www.effectivechurchcom.com, and I'm sure Cliff will have it available for you. There's a ton of stuff on there that is completely free. In fact, the majority of the stuff is free. Sign up for my newsletter, because in that, again, it's not a spammy thing. It's not a selling you thing. I show church communicators. I'm real sporadic on putting it out. I mean, I wish I was more organized, but I do all the stuff with the church, and, we're in this middle of this, backpack from Mexico project, and I'm sorry, that's more important. And, but anyway, moving right along. I have all this stuff, and you need to really spend some time with that and learning how to do these different things. Having said that, I cannot tell you how many people get back to me and quite honestly, Cliff, say, we can't believe what happened. We cannot believe what happened. We have all these, not only new members, people coming back, people sharing prayer requests, more people involved in the church. I can't even begin to tell you the stories of really extraordinary ways the Lord uses very, very simple things. That's a whole thing. But it's like, and I don't know who said this, but someone said, what's really important is a long obedience in the same direction. I don't tell you, do this and boom, 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 boom. It's all going to be better. No, it's a whole. Sadly, in our world today, it's a very different approach to church communications. It's a lot of work, a lot of repetition. You're going to be good at connection cards. You got to set up a database. You got to send up the follow-up. You've got to do work that you will just absolutely. It's not fun. You're going to hate doing it, but you just be faithful. You be faithful, and people respond. So that's what works.
Wow. So I understand you have some books you're going to show me?
Oh, okay. Well, I have, let me see if I can, does this show? Yeah. Okay. This was the first book I wrote. A little bit of nostalgia. This was the Desktop Publishing Remedy. This was actually the very first book that was written on desktop publishing for the church. And then that went out of print And then this one, I'm just showing you a little background stuff. It became the How to Use Your Computer to Better Newsletters, Bulletins, and More. Gospel Light published that, and that went out of print. And then it is now, it has its third printing called Back to Basics, and you can get this off my website. It's downloadable. It's PDFs of all of the stuff that I did. By the way, a little bit of nostalgia here. I created this book originally on a little Mac Plus, one of the first ones off the assembly line. Been signed inside the case. Everybody worked on it. A whopping 4 megs of RAM, and did all of, so that was interesting. But now I have a number of things that I have that are really good. This is my devotions for church communicators. This one is just pure encouragement.
I can't see that one. Put that one up again. I didn't see the title. Put it up again. The title. Okay. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Devotions for church communicators. I've got this downloadable version. It's available on Amazon. My stuff's all available on Amazon. Everything's available on Amazon. But this one, it doesn't cost very much. And it just, the dedication in the book is to what I call the great ones. And the great ones are church communicators. I just worked so hard, and I wrote this to really encourage them. This is my bestseller right now, Church Connection Cards. You had no idea that a whole big old book is needed for Church Connection Cards, but this tells you everything about from, how to lay them out, how to do them, how to follow up on them, how to design them, how to, what you shouldn't be doing, and questions, all that. And then I have I've got a ton of stuff out there. This is just one other one. I'm just pulling out the stuff that I actually had a printed copy of. Churches don't measure what they do. How do you know whether the postcard worked or the, whatever worked if you don't track it? Well, people say, oh, well, that just doesn't work. Well, did you measure it? Did you, you're doing this event, and one time you do a newsletter and you do a bulletin insert, which, by the way, I'm a huge fan of bulletin inserts. I just have to take a minute to tell you about this.
Please.
Because churches hate them. Oh, they just hate them. Oh, people throw them all on the floor, and blah, 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 waste paper and, kills trees. And, there's just such a mess. And I respond by saying, first of all, the trees died for a good cause. And then secondly, we're the shepherds, they're the sheepies. What do sheepies do? They make messes, we clean up. So those are not valid. But seriously, bulletin inserts are so powerful because what happens is you take that bulletin insert, and if it's something that's important to your family, a ministry you want to be involved in, something you don't want to forget, you take that, and where do you put that bulletin insert? Where does it end up? It ends up on the refrigerator. And doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Home in America. That's where it is. And that's what the refrigerator is, what I call communication central for every home today. Because, let me give you an example. This is really important. Okay, you're doing something at the church on Friday night. And you do this big splashy PowerPoint on it. And you think, oh, everybody's going to remember it. Well, when Friday comes around and you're thinking, oh, there's something going on at the church tonight. Nobody's at the church office. You can't call anybody. You log on to the website, with your smartphone, very techie person that you are, and you realize, oh, yeah, the church never updates the website. That's, and so, what do? If it's on the refrigerator, you show up. All the details are right there. If not, you just go, oh, well, hope wasn't too interesting. Now, isn't that really how life goes?
That's true.
But see, a lot of churches, they don't want to do bulletin inserts anymore for all these silly reasons. I think it's of the enemy. He knows how powerful they are. So I tell them, track them. Do an event where all you did was had a bulletin announcement, and see, having it as an announcement in the bulletin isn't enough. Because what do we do with the bulletin? We get home from church, we're cleaning out our Bibles, we throw it in the trash. The bulletin as a whole, we don't keep. It's kind of this.
Well, we keep that one piece of paper inside the bulletin.
See? I'd say to people,
okay.
Do you see the entire church bulletin on the refrigerator? You don't. It's just funny little things that we do, that nobody thinks about, but, sit at home and obsess about them. Okay, what do they do with those pieces of paper? But seriously, it's really important. So, if it was a youth event and kids are supposed to bring their friends, I mean, somebody might come and find Jesus. That's important. That's the kind of thing that I see. You're probably thinking you were going to interview me and get this really high tech, exciting tips, and I've got all the So it's crazy little stuff that makes a difference.
No, you have delivered everything I could ever expect. This has been really good. This has been really good. So I believe that's it. Unless there's something else that I didn't think to ask you that you want to convey, that a question you get asked frequently from your readers. Is there anything else that I might be missing?
Let me just say one other thing. I just now thought this because I was thinking, okay, what is it? No, you have asked some super good questions. By the way, you are a good interviewer.
Oh,
you really are. You really are. I think the one other thing that I want to communicate, and I want to be very serious about this, is there is a trend in some church communications today to use profane language, to use very snarky, cool, let's be like the world to win the world. That's wrong. I mean, it's just unequivocally wrong. I think in all we do, we serve a holy God, and we are to represent Him. And, I tell people, I've done quite a bit of writing on this, Jesus had the ability, and to have seen how He did it. He never compromised. He never quit being who He was. He never descended to the level of the people that were accusing Him, screaming at Him, saying awful things about Him. He never did that. And yet everyone loved Him and was comfortable with Him. And so that's one really important challenge that I would leave with people, because I see things online, and and some of it's even promoted by some contemporary things, and I just go, no. We serve a holy God. We are to be His ambassadors. And so I just, I think that's it doesn't matter what technology we use. That's always going to change. I mean, should the Lord tarry, who knows what we're going to be, what we're going to be. I mean, I started out thinking that the self-correcting typewriter was the epitome. It would never get better than that. And now, look what I'm using today. So we don't know, but our convictions need to stay the same.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point. And I don't want anybody watching this or listening to this to confuse what you're saying versus there may be churches or individuals who don't want to be current, who don't want to evolve. And then they'll take what you just said and use that as their excuse for not evolving, that we're not being who we are, and we're not. I think evolution and innovation is important.
Oh, so important, but with the right attitude.
Yes, exactly.
Because I mean, I always use myself as an example. I'm 63 years old. I don't care. People know how old I am. I mean, white hair. But I find it just really exciting, all these new things. So you do want to keep evolving. You do want to keep trying new stuff. You do want to do all that. But we want to do it in a way that's always glorifying to Jesus. That's the thing. But don't be afraid. Try the new stuff. My website takes you through little baby steps. Know my stuff. I teach you how to do it cheap, easy, all that kind of thing. But do it. Whatever you need to do to keep communicating the gospel.
That's great. Is there anything else that I might have missed that you want to?
I can't think of anything. This has been fun.
It's been great. For everybody watching and listening, and some of you may be watching this on YouTube or iTunes, that all the books you mentioned, I will have links to all those books on thegospelblog.com underneath this interview. So in case people were feverishly writing quickly as you were flashing books across the screen, I will have links to all those books. Also a link to your website and your Twitter account. Please let people know where they can find your website, and as well as any other social media you want to let them know about.
I will do that. Well, I was just going to say this, I just wanted to say again, this has been delightful.
Okay, and your website again is?
www.effectivechurchcom.com.
Okay. And your Twitter account?
Yvon Prehn at Twitter. all that. I mean, you know how to go. Everybody that's on Twitter knows Twitter, but it's just Yvon Prehn, YVON PREHN. Yeah.
Okay. And of course, for those of you watching and listening, thegospelblog.com, and on Twitter and Facebook is The Gospel Blog. Thank you, Yvon, very much. It's been a great pleasure. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you too.